The first encounter. The stars above Earth flickered like distant candles in the endless night. Humanity had long dreamed of making contact with extraterrestrial beings, imagining peaceful exchanges, or perhaps sharing knowledge from across the galaxy. But when it finally happened, it wasn't the peaceful first contact they had hoped for. The first signs of the alien ships appeared on Earth's radar late one evening, their massive silhouettes dark against the backdrop of the stars. At first, they seemed like any other anomaly, something that could be explained away as a natural phenomenon or a misunderstanding. But the truth was undeniable. The ships didn't come to greet humanity. They came to conquer. For days, strange ships hovered silently in the skies, their dark shapes impossible to ignore. These ships were enormous, hundreds of times larger than anything humanity had ever seen. Their smooth surfaces reflected no light, and their structures twisted and turned in unnatural ways. Some scientists speculated they were made from materials not even known to humankind, but there was no time to study them. The aliens did not wait for Earth's response. They made their presence known in an instant. The first message came through every communication channel, in every language on Earth. It was clear, cold, and filled with arrogance. "We are the Aranax. Your planet is now under our control. Surrender now, and we will spare your species. Resist, and we will destroy you." The humans, terrified, had no idea how to respond. A single ship, the size of a city, had appeared over New York, blocking out the sun. It was a sign, a demonstration of power. Governments scrambled to find a solution, but there was no military in the world prepared to fight such an advanced force. Their ships were mere toys compared to the Aranax warships. In the midst of the chaos, a young scientist named Dr. Sarah Reed worked tirelessly in a secret government laboratory. She had always known that humanity was not alone in the universe, but she had never imagined that the first alien encounter would be a battle for survival. She had spent her career studying alien theories, trying to find ways humans could defend themselves against extraterrestrial threats. But now she realized there was nothing in her research that could have prepared her for this. As panic spread across the planet, the Aranax made their next move. Their massive ships released smaller craft that began to land in cities around the world. They didn't need to invade. They made it clear they could simply take what they wanted by force. Military forces around the world tried to respond, but every attempt was quickly crushed by the overwhelming power of the alien invaders. For days, humanity was forced to watch as their cities fell one by one, powerless to stop it. The Aranax made no effort to understand human culture or communicate peacefully. They only wanted submission. Every resistance effort was met with violence. It seemed that humanity's future was nothing more than a faint memory, a species doomed to fade into the dark corners of the universe. But even in the darkest moments, there were whispers of something more. Among the global chaos, there were rumors of a hidden program, something buried deep within Earth's history, a project that had been kept secret for generations. But the details were a mystery, even to the people who whispered about it. Dr. Reed had heard the rumors. She had dismissed them at first as nothing more than desperate hopes of a defeated population. But now, with Earth on the brink of collapse, she began to wonder, could it be true? Could humanity have something hidden that could turn the tide? It was during one of the darkest hours, when it seemed humanity had no chance, that the unthinkable happened. A sudden flash of light illuminated the sky. It was as if the stars themselves were reacting. Across the globe, people looked up, confused and fearful. And then, as quickly as it had appeared, the flash faded. At first, it was thought to be another attack from the Aranax. The alien ships seemed to glow even brighter, as if they were preparing for something massive. But as the minutes passed, the light remained. It wasn't from the invaders. Humanity's hope stirred as the impossible happened. A massive object appeared in the sky, flickering in and out of existence, like a mirage. It was no ordinary ship. It was like nothing anyone had ever seen. This was no alien vessel. This was a vessel from Earth. The ship, though ancient in design, seemed to shimmer with energy, a strange aura that pulsed like the heartbeat of the universe itself. It flickered again, as if moving between dimensions. The vessel's appearance sent shockwaves of disbelief and awe through Earth's people. What was this ship? Where had it come from? The Aronnax fleet paused. For the first time since their arrival, their ships hesitated. They didn't understand what they were seeing. The unknown vessel wasn't from any civilization they had encountered. And yet, it was more powerful than anything they had ever faced. As the strange ship grew larger, its shape became clearer. It was sleek and shining, a sharp contrast to the dark, menacing ships of the Aronnax. And then the unthinkable happened. The ship began to move, warping reality itself, as if it were passing through space and time in ways no human or alien could comprehend. The Aronnax fleet began to move again, but this time with hesitation. They were not in control of the situation. For the first time, they were out of their depth. The humans had something they could not understand, and they knew it. The battle for Earth had just begun, but the first strike had already been made, and humanity wasn't going down without a fight. The mockery. The Earth was now in the grip of something far greater than its leaders had ever imagined. The Aronnax had descended upon the planet, their advanced fleet casting an ominous shadow over humanity's cities. Nations scrambled, attempting to form alliances, and military leaders quickly realized their weapons were nothing but toys compared to the alien warships that filled the skies. Yet, despite their overwhelming presence, the aliens made no attempt to attack immediately. Instead, they spoke through their ships, projecting messages of disdain and mockery for the human race. Foolish creatures, boomed the alien voice through every communication device on Earth, echoing through television broadcasts, radio stations, and even personal devices. You are nothing more than insects to us. Your technology is laughable, your planet insignificant. Surrender now, or we will destroy you. The people of Earth trembled in fear. Some cities had already fallen, and the global military forces could do nothing to halt the unstoppable advance of the Aronnax. Their ships hovered above the tallest buildings, and their smaller crafts scoured the streets below, capturing anyone who dared to resist. The alien forces didn't need to fight for dominance. They had already made it clear they could crush humanity with ease. It was a form of psychological warfare. The aliens weren't just fighting to conquer. They were humiliating humans, treating them like little more than a joke. In the chaos, the humans who were left struggled to find a way to respond. Governments scrambled to form a defense, but in their panic, they only found themselves growing weaker. Fear spread like wildfire, and desperation set in. There was no time for diplomacy, no time for waiting. The aliens had given their ultimatum, and humanity was faced with the terrible choice of surrendering or being wiped out. But somewhere deep in the shadows, a small group of scientists, engineers, and military leaders began to work in secret. They knew that surrender was not an option. They also knew they were facing an enemy like no other. Still, they clung to hope, drawing on the very thing that had allowed humanity to survive countless challenges throughout history: ingenuity. Among them was Dr. Sarah Reed, who had witnessed firsthand the utter helplessness of Earth's forces against the Aronnax. She knew humanity could not win this fight using conventional methods. Earth's weapons were not advanced enough, and humanity's greatest military minds had been rendered helpless. But Dr. Reed had a theory that had been hidden from the public for decades, a theory that had begun to feel more like a desperate hope than a solid possibility. What if humanity had something they had been hiding for generations? What if the rumors about a hidden project, one focused on bending the laws of space and time, were true? Could there be something within Earth's reach that would shift the balance? Dr. Reed quickly found herself alone in her thoughts. There was no way to verify the rumors without risking the lives of others. Yet the more she thought about it, the more she was convinced that the key to humanity's survival lay not in brute force, but in the power of the unknown. the very forces of the universe itself that humans had never fully understood. Meanwhile, across the globe, the alien forces were growing bolder. Their ships moved across the skies with increasing speed, setting up bases on the planet's surface. They took over government buildings, military strongholds, and even the United Nations headquarters. It was as if the aliens had no fear of any resistance. Every move they made was a display of their dominance over Earth. Then came another broadcast, even more degrading than the first. "We give you one final chance," the alien commander announced coldly, their voice filled with contempt. "You can submit now and be spared, or we will wipe out every last one of you. You are weak. You are nothing." The message rang out across every corner of the globe, and for a moment, the people of Earth were paralyzed. There was no escaping the fear that gripped the hearts of men and women alike. The aliens had not only attacked their cities, they had destroyed their morale. It was not just about military defeat. The Aranaks were attacking humanity's very spirit. As the broadcast ended, people across the world found themselves reflecting on the same question. Could humanity truly survive this? Were they really as powerless as the aliens claimed? Or was there something more, something hidden away, that could turn the tide? Deep within the hidden research labs, Dr. Reed worked tirelessly, poring over old documents, scanning old blueprints, and trying to piece together the fragments of a plan she could barely comprehend. In the darkest corners of humanity's secret projects, she had found something the aliens could never have known. Something that was not just a weapon, but an answer to the Aranaks' mockery. But time was running out. Humanity had little left to lose. The alien forces had almost complete control, but there was one thing they hadn't counted on: the hidden vessel that had been waiting for this moment. The ship designed in secrecy, capable of navigating not just space, but bending the very laws of reality. A ship that had the power to shift the course of battle in ways the Aranaks could never have imagined. In the silence of her lab, Dr. Reed felt the weight of the decision ahead of her. The moment was approaching when humanity's hidden weapon would finally be revealed. But could it truly live up to the legends? Could it be enough to stop the invaders who had already reduced Earth to a shadow of itself? She stood up from her desk, staring out at the ruins of a world on the brink. And in that moment, she knew that humanity's fate would soon be decided, not by force, but by something far greater. The hidden vessel, the seventh dimension, and everything that had been kept secret for so long. It was time for them to reveal themselves. The hidden vessel. The world had descended into chaos, its people on the brink of despair. The Aranaks had swept through Earth with terrifying efficiency, dismantling every form of resistance. Governments, military forces, and civilians were helpless in the face of the alien onslaught. For days, Earth seemed to be drowning in hopelessness, as if humanity's final hour had arrived. But in the silence of a hidden underground laboratory, Dr. Sarah Reed sat hunched over a holographic console, her mind racing with the knowledge of something humanity had never revealed. Something so advanced, so powerful, that even the aliens would be unable to fathom it. A ship, a vessel, unlike anything the universe had ever seen. It wasn't just a tool of war. It was a secret humanity had kept buried for generations. And now, with Earth's survival on the line, it was time to bring it to life. As Dr. Reed continued to work tirelessly, the world above her continued to fall apart. Cities lay in ruins, with alien warships occupying every major capital. Resistance forces had been decimated, and the hope that humanity might ever stand a chance against the Aranaks seemed to fade with each passing hour. People had begun to lose faith, and the aliens seemed content to watch their victory unfold. In the midst of the devastation, Dr. Reed's lab was a sanctuary of sorts, a place of hidden knowledge. She had always known that humanity had something powerful hidden away, something even more extraordinary than the alien invaders could imagine. But in order to bring this secret to light, she had to face the consequences of unveiling it. The world might never be the same again. A low hum vibrated through the room as Dr. Reed activated the console in front of her. Slowly, a holographic projection of the vessel began to form. Its shape was otherworldly, sleek and angular, with patterns that seemed to shift and shimmer as if the ship itself were alive. The vessel didn't just seem to exist in the physical plane. It existed in another dimension entirely, the seventh dimension. For years, scientists had theorized about higher dimensions, places beyond the reach of human understanding. But no one had ever anticipated that a secret project could open a gateway to those realms. The ship that now stood before Dr. Reed was the culmination of decades of research, an artifact of humanity's most ambitious and secretive pursuit. Bending the laws of space and time, her fingers moved quickly over the controls, activating the ship's core systems. A surge of energy pulsed through the room as the ship's engines hummed to life. Dr. Reed had never seen anything like it before. She could feel the energy radiating off the vessel, as if it were tapping into forces that were beyond her comprehension. Outside the laboratory, the Aronnax fleet continued to impose their dominance over the planet. But their confidence was growing, and so too was their arrogance. They believed they had Earth under their control. They had underestimated humanity before, and they would soon make the fatal mistake of doing it again. As the ship in the lab came to life, the atmosphere in Dr. Reed's heart began to shift. The vessel could not just travel through space. It could travel through dimensions. And in a way, this vessel wasn't just a weapon. It was the key to something much greater. Humanity had discovered the secret to manipulating the very fabric of the universe itself. If they could harness this power, they could stop the Aronnax and perhaps even challenge them in ways that were impossible to predict. But there was a problem. The vessel wasn't ready. Despite the advanced technology that powered it, there was a danger. The ship's core was unstable. One miscalculation, one mistake, and the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for humanity, but for the entire planet. Dr. Reed knew she couldn't risk testing the ship without completing the final phase of its activation. She had to stabilize the core, something that only a handful of scientists had ever been able to understand. But time was running out, and the Aronnax were not waiting for humanity to finish their work. As she prepared to make the final adjustments, Dr. Reed's thoughts flashed back to the first day she had learned about the secret project. It had seemed like a dream then, an ambitious hope that humanity could one day outsmart the stars themselves. But now, in the face of real alien invaders, the dream had become humanity's only hope for survival. Suddenly, the lights in the lab flickered. A loud crash echoed from the surface. Another Aronnax assault had begun. Dr. Reed didn't have much time. Her heart raced as she inputted the final sequence to stabilize the vessel's core. The air in the room grew heavier with the power building inside the ship. And then, with a deep pulse, the ship flickered again, as if stepping between realities. It was ready. Outside, the alien warships seemed to hesitate, as though they could feel the shift in the air. Something was different. The ship that had once been hidden in secret was now a glowing beacon, visible to the enemy forces above. It was time. Dr. Reed stood back, staring at the ship in awe. There it was, the weapon that could change the fate of the world. Humanity's last chance to fight back. But just as hope began to spark in her chest, a warning flashed on her console. The vessel's energy levels were spiking. If it wasn't deployed soon, the ship might self-destruct, taking everything with it. The vessel had been hidden for a reason. No one had truly understood its full potential, not even those who had built it. But now, humanity had no choice but to take the risk. Dr. Reed took a deep breath and activated the ship's launch sequence. The shift. As Dr. Sarah Reed watched the glowing vessel pulse with energy, the realization of what she had just unleashed hit her. The ship wasn't just a technological marvel. It was an enigma, a creation that had been hidden for centuries. Its power was beyond anything humanity had ever encountered, and yet she couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. The vessel was ready, but would humanity be able to control it? She glanced at the countdown timer on her console. It was ticking down, the seconds moving with relentless speed. The ship was primed, but she had one final choice to make. Activate the vessel and risk everything, or abort and continue to watch as Earth was systematically torn apart by the Aranax. Dr. Reed's mind raced. She thought of her family, her friends, the millions of people on Earth who were still holding on to hope. The Aranax had already decimated major cities, and their forces continued to crush any resistance. But within her hands was a weapon that could change everything. This was humanity's final chance. There could be no more waiting. With a determined breath, Dr. Reed hit the activation button. The vessel in front of her hummed louder, a sound that filled the room with an otherworldly vibration. The air around it began to shimmer, as if reality itself were bending. She watched, heart pounding in her chest, as the ship began to shift, becoming translucent and flickering between dimensions. The once solid form of the vessel seemed to bend and twist, like a reflection in a distorted mirror. And then, with a sudden flash, it disappeared from the lab entirely. The room fell silent. Dr. Reed stood frozen, her eyes wide. It had worked. The ship had vanished, but where had it gone? She turned and sprinted to the observation window. Outside, the Aranax fleet loomed over the city, their warships floating ominously in the skies. Dr. Reed's breath caught in her throat as she saw a small rip in the atmosphere, the first signs of a breach in reality. The vessel had emerged from the seventh dimension. It wasn't just hiding in space anymore. It had entered another plane of existence, one that the Aranax couldn't touch. And now, it was back. Through the rip in the fabric of space-time, the hidden vessel emerged. But it wasn't alone. From the dark expanse behind the ship, a wave of light rippled through the sky, illuminating the alien ships in a flash of white. The Aranax were taken aback, their ships jerking slightly, as if they could feel the immense power radiating from the vessel. This wasn't just any ship. It was a force unto itself, and the Aranax had no way of understanding what it was. The ship, glowing with energy, continued to hover above the city. For a brief moment, everything seemed still. The alien invaders, who had been so confident in their superiority, paused in uncertainty. The force of the vessel was unlike anything they had ever encountered. Then, without warning, the ship moved. It wasn't a typical movement. There was no thruster fire, no massive acceleration. Instead, the vessel seemed to glide through space, faster than anything the human eye could follow. It shot towards the closest Aranax warship, its shape distorting as it moved, bending the very air around it. The alien ship, which had once loomed over the city with such terrifying presence, was now nothing more than a sitting target. It had no chance to react. The vessel collided with the Aranax warship, and for a moment, everything was engulfed in a brilliant flash of light. The sound of the explosion was deafening, but it was unlike any explosion humanity had ever heard. It didn't simply rupture the ship. It seemed to tear at the very fabric of space itself. The alien warship crumpled like paper, its structure buckling under the weight of the energy unleashed by the vessel. As the light faded, nothing remained but the debris of the ship, floating in the empty sky. Dr. Reed stood in awe, but there was no time to celebrate. The other alien warships were already adjusting their positions, their weapons primed and aimed at the vessel. The Aranax were not going to be so easily deterred. They had underestimated humanity once, but they would not make that mistake again. They knew now that they were facing something far beyond their own understanding. The vessel's power pulsed once more, and this time, it wasn't just a warning. It was a declaration. Humanity was not going down without a fight. Dr. Reed felt a surge of hope. The Aranax might have thought they were invincible, but they had no idea what they were up against. She knew the ship could take on their entire fleet, but it needed something more. Humanity's will to survive, the strength that had carried them through millennia of challenges. Suddenly, a voice crackled through the comms. It was a voice Dr. Reed had heard only in her dreams. The vessel was responding to her. "Ready, Dr. Reed," it said, a calm, mechanical voice, but one that carried an undeniable strength. "Initiating full activation. We are no longer bound by your laws, Aronnax." The ship's energy surged again, brighter and more powerful than before. It was time for humanity to take back what was theirs. The Aronnax, seeing their fleet threatened by a force they couldn't comprehend, scrambled to react. But it was too late. The vessel, already shifting through dimensions, was faster than their weapons could ever aim. One by one, their ships fell from the sky, torn apart by the unseen forces that the hidden vessel controlled. They tried to retaliate, firing everything they had, but their efforts were in vain. The ship bent and twisted through the very fabric of space, reappearing in places they couldn't reach, striking without warning. Dr. Reed's heart raced as she watched the scene unfold before her eyes. The alien invaders were retreating, unable to face the power of the vessel and the unstoppable force of humanity's will. It was happening. Humanity was striking back. But this was only the beginning. The unseen war. The sky above Earth had turned dark, lit only by the remnants of the burning Aronnax ships. Their fleet had been decimated, their superior technology rendered useless against a force they couldn't comprehend. The vessel, still glowing with unimaginable energy, hovered silently in the sky, its form shifting between dimensions as if it existed outside the very rules of time and space. It was a sight that humanity had only dreamed of, a weapon so powerful that it had turned the tide of the war in a matter of moments. But even as the battle above the city raged, Dr. Sarah Reed felt a growing unease. The Aronnax may have lost their first confrontation, but their retreat was not the end. Their forces were vast, and their technology far beyond what humanity had ever encountered. The victory was bittersweet. They had no idea what would come next. "Dr. Reed," a voice interrupted her thoughts, crackling through the comms. "We've intercepted a message from the Aronnax fleet. They're regrouping. They're preparing something big." Dr. Reed's heart sank. It wasn't over. The Aronnax weren't just going to give up. This wasn't just a battle. It was a war for the survival of Earth. The voice continued. "We're detecting something. Another ship, larger than anything we've seen before. It's coming from deep within their fleet, and it's heading directly towards us." Dr. Reed stood frozen for a moment, her mind racing. What could the Aronnax possibly have that could match the vessel? Nothing they had used so far had even come close to touching it. But this new ship was different, and the fact that they were sending it in after the defeat of their fleet only meant one thing: desperation. "We have to be ready," Dr. Reed said, her voice calm but tinged with the weight of what she was about to face. "Prepare the vessel for another shift. We'll intercept them before they get too close." As she made her way to the control room, she watched the holographic display of Earth's surface. The Aronnax fleet, though in disarray, was regrouping. There was no telling how long they would take to rebuild their forces, but it was clear that they were far from defeated. The real fight had just begun. Dr. Reed glanced at the screens in front of her. The hidden vessel was still hovering above the city, its power source slowly stabilizing. She couldn't afford to let the Aronnax recover. If they were allowed to regroup, Earth's defenses might not last another assault. But even as she prepared for the next wave, another thought echoed in her mind. What exactly was this new ship the Aronnax had unleashed? "Dr. Reed," another voice crackled through the comms. "We've got visuals on the new ship. It's unlike anything we've ever seen." The screen flickered as a large, dark ship appeared in the distance, its surface rippling with energy. It was enormous, far larger than any of the previous Aronnax warships, and it was approaching fast. The ship's hull seemed to shimmer as if it were partially phasing in and out of reality. It wasn't just a physical ship. It was as though it existed in multiple dimensions at once, much like the hidden vessel that humanity had just unleashed. Dr. Reed's pulse quickened. This was it. The final confrontation. She had no idea what this new ship could do, but one thing was clear. It was a weapon designed to face the vessel humanity had hidden for so long. "We'll need to move quickly," Dr. Reed said, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "Activate the ship. We're not letting them get any closer." The vessel responded instantly, its form shifting as it prepared to make the jump. The energy inside it swirled, building once more as the fabric of space-time stretched around the ship. Dr. Reed felt the familiar pull of the vessel's power, the sensation of reality warping around them as it prepared to move. In an instant, the vessel disappeared, reappearing just outside the massive Aronnax ship. It was there, in the blink of an eye, poised for the next strike. The Aronnax ship loomed large before them, its surface glowing with dangerous energy. The massive craft seemed to pulse with life, like some kind of sentient being. It was clear that this wasn't just another warship. It was a weapon, designed for one purpose: to destroy the hidden vessel. "Fire everything," Dr. Reed ordered. "Take them down before they can retaliate." The vessel responded immediately, unleashing a barrage of energy beams, each one capable of tearing apart entire fleets. The beams struck the Aronnax ship with precision, tearing into its armor, but the ship didn't flinch. Instead, the energy beams seemed to dissipate, absorbed into the ship's surface. It was using some form of energy shield, one that even the hidden vessel's weapons couldn't penetrate. Dr. Reed's heart raced as she watched the alien ship adjust. It was learning, adapting to their attacks. The Aronnax weren't just fighting back, they were evolving mid-battle. And that terrified her. "We need to get inside their shields," Dr. Reed said, her voice tense. "Can we manipulate the dimensional frequency of the vessel to bypass their defense?" The technician on the other end of the comms nodded. "We can try. It's risky, but we'll need to shift the vessel's frequency to a higher dimension. That should allow us to bypass the shield entirely." Dr. Reed didn't hesitate. "Do it." The ship's core hummed louder than ever before as it shifted, its form warping even further as it adjusted its dimensional frequency. The ship vanished from its current location, reappearing inside the energy shield of the Aronnax vessel. It was like a ghost moving through the walls of reality itself. The next moments passed in a blur of flashing lights and rising tension. The vessel fired again, this time striking directly at the core of the Aronnax ship. There was no shield to block it. The Aronnax ship shuddered violently as the energy beams pierced its heart, and for a moment, everything seemed to stop. Then, with an explosive crack, the Aronnax ship crumpled, its core collapsing under the pressure of the hidden vessel's attack. It exploded, sending a shockwave across the battlefield. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then, the Aronnax began to retreat. They had underestimated humanity's hidden weapon, and now they had no idea what would come next. The final gambit. The explosion of the Aronnax warship left a deafening silence in its wake, the battlefield still and eerily quiet. Dr. Reed's breath was heavy, her hands gripping the console as her eyes locked onto the massive screen in front of her. The pieces of the destroyed warship floated in space, but the Aronnax didn't retreat, not entirely. She knew they would regroup. The aliens were relentless, and their fleet had already begun shifting, realigning to form a new strategy. It wasn't over. Not yet. Dr. Reed felt it deep in her gut. The final showdown was coming. The Aronnax had tasted defeat, and they would come back with everything they had. A low hum vibrated through the hidden vessel as it hovered above the burning cities of Earth. Its form shifted between dimensions, blending in and out of reality, ready for the next fight. But as the seconds ticked by, something else seemed to stir within the ship itself. The vessel was more than just a weapon. It was a force beyond understanding, a creation of the seventh dimension that humanity had only begun to comprehend. "Dr. Reed, we're receiving a transmission," one of the technicians called out, her voice tense. "It's from the Aronnax fleet. It's a direct message." Dr. Reed's pulse quickened. She glanced at the screen, where a holographic image of an alien figure appeared. Its skin was a dark, glossy black, and its eyes glowed with a chilling light. The figure spoke in a language that Dr. Reed didn't understand, but the tone was unmistakable. It was an ultimatum. "We are the Aranax," the voice reverberated through the command center, a deep mechanical growl that seemed to shake the very air. "You have taken from us. Now, we will take everything. Your world will burn. You will never defeat us." The transmission flickered, the image of the alien fading out of view as the message ended. Dr. Reed's mind raced. The Aranax were making their move. They weren't going to stop until they had destroyed humanity once and for all. But Dr. Reed had something they didn't: the hidden vessel. "We need to prepare," Dr. Reed said, her voice unwavering despite the weight of the situation. "We can't let them get any closer. The vessel can handle more, but we need to push it further. It's time to use the final sequence." The technician nodded, typing furiously at the console. "Activating final sequence now. This will put the ship's energy into overdrive. The vessel will reach its full potential, but it will only be able to sustain this level for a short time." Dr. Reed didn't hesitate. "Do it, whatever it takes." The hum of the vessel's core grew louder, a deep, resonating sound that filled the entire command center. It was a sound of pure power, of energy that transcended human comprehension. The walls of the command room shook, and the air felt thick with the charge of impending action. Outside, the sky began to glow brighter as the Aranax fleet reappeared. They had regrouped quickly, their ships moving in formation like a deadly swarm. But this time, they were not prepared for what was coming. The vessel, humanity's last hope, shifted, its form becoming less solid, almost ethereal. It glowed brighter than before, its energy now visible in the air around it. It was as if the ship had transcended its physical form, becoming something more, something greater. And then, without warning, the vessel disappeared. It wasn't a mere shift in space. It was a tear in reality itself. The hidden ship now existed in a place outside of the universe, a space where time and dimensions collided. For a brief moment, the Aranax fleet was disoriented, their ships flickering in and out of focus, unable to lock onto the vessel's exact location. But then, the vessel reappeared, directly in the heart of the Aranax fleet. The destruction was instantaneous. The first alien ship was torn apart with a single surge of energy. The vessel didn't just fire beams of destruction. It unraveled the very fabric of space around the enemy, pulling the ships into different dimensions and crushing them under the weight of their own gravitational forces. The Aranax tried to retaliate, firing everything they had, but their weapons were useless against the vessel. The ship was no longer just a weapon. It was a force of nature, bending space and time at will. Dr. Reed watched from the control center as the Aranax fleet faltered. One by one, their ships began to disappear, pulled into the void, torn apart by forces that were beyond anything the aliens could understand. The battlefield became a swirling chaos of light, energy, and destruction. But then, the final threat appeared. A massive rift tore open in space itself, and from it emerged the largest Aranax warship Dr. Reed had ever seen. It was unlike anything the humans had faced before, a ship so massive that it dwarfed the entire Aranax fleet. It radiated dark energy, its core glowing with an ominous red light. This was their last and most powerful weapon, a ship that could tear entire planets apart with a single strike. "Brace yourselves," Dr. Reed murmured to herself, knowing that this would be the true test. This ship wasn't just another enemy vessel. It was the end of everything, or humanity's final stand. The hidden vessel shifted once more, its power surging as it prepared to face the colossal Aranax warship. Dr. Reed's hands gripped the console, her heart pounding. The moment of truth had arrived. Would humanity's final gambit succeed, or would the Aranax bring an end to Earth's existence? The last stand. The colossal Aranax warship loomed before them, its dark form rippling with ominous energy, its power growing with each passing second. The ship was a fortress, a weapon designed to bring about the annihilation of entire planets. Earth's fate rested on the shoulders of humanity's hidden vessel, a force that had been hidden for eons, now unleashed against an enemy unlike any they had ever faced. Dr. Reed stood before the control panel, her heart pounding as the enormity of the situation settled in. The Aranax ship was not just big, it was an extinction-level weapon. It had already decimated countless civilizations, and now Earth was its next target. This wasn't just a fight for victory, it was a fight for survival. "Can we hold them off?" asked one of the technicians, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and hope. Dr. Reed didn't answer immediately. She watched the screens, seeing the massive Aranax warship charge its weapons. The planet's atmosphere was already crackling with the energy emitted from its core. The ship was preparing to unleash a devastating blast, one that would wipe out Earth's remaining defenses in an instant. The hidden vessel thrummed, vibrating with an almost otherworldly power. It had shifted once more, its form undulating as it drew energy from the deepest corners of space. But Dr. Reed knew that this final push would be the vessel's last. The energy coursing through its veins was too much. It couldn't sustain this level of power forever. If they failed, they would be out of time. "Prepare for the final sequence," Dr. Reed ordered, her voice calm despite the chaos unfolding around her. "We either stop them now, or Earth is lost." The technician nodded, typing furiously at the controls. "Activating sequence. We're running on borrowed time. The vessel's energy reserves won't last long." On the view screen, the massive Aranax warship fired first. A beam of concentrated dark energy shot from its core, streaking across the sky like a comet of death. The beam pulsed with unnatural force, carving through the atmosphere as it raced toward the hidden vessel. "Brace for impact," someone shouted in the control room. But Dr. Reed wasn't afraid. She had no time for fear. The vessel hummed louder, shifting into a higher dimension, its form flickering like a mirage. The beam of energy from the Aranax ship slammed into the space where the hidden vessel had just been, but it was already gone. The Aranax ship's attack passed through empty space as the hidden vessel reappeared directly above the massive warship. It was a calculated risk, too close for comfort, but it was the only option they had left. The energy from the vessel surged, almost as though the entire ship was alive, feeding on the very essence of existence itself. "Fire everything," Dr. Reed commanded. The vessel responded instantly. Energy blasts of unimaginable power shot out, striking the surface of the Aranax warship. But this was no ordinary attack. The vessel was not merely firing energy. It was channeling the very fabric of space and time, tearing at the laws of physics themselves. Reality itself bent and broke as the hidden vessel unleashed its full potential. The first wave of attacks struck the Aranax ship, creating ripples in space as massive chunks of its hull disintegrated under the assault. The massive warship trembled, its energy shields flickering as they struggled to keep up with the intensity of the attack. But even as the shields faltered, the Aranax warship retaliated, sending another wave of destructive energy back toward the hidden vessel. But this time, the vessel didn't dodge. It didn't shift. It stood its ground. The energy blast struck the vessel's core, sending a shockwave through its structure. The entire ship shuddered as it absorbed the blow. But Dr. Reed, now connected to the ship's very essence, felt its power surging in response. The hidden vessel wasn't just a machine. It was an extension of humanity's will, and it would not falter. "Hold strong," she shouted, knowing that the vessel was at its breaking point. The final battle continued in flashes of light and chaos. The Aranax warship's massive weapon fired again and again, but each time the hidden vessel countered with greater power, bending space itself to protect the Earth. The hidden vessel was at its peak, pushing beyond its limits, each pulse of energy threatening to tear the very fabric of existence apart. And then, in a final, desperate act, the vessel unleashed everything it had. A massive burst of energy erupted from its core, a wave of destructive force that sent ripples through space itself. The very laws of physics seemed to crack as the wave of energy tore through the Aronnax warship, ripping apart its hull and destabilizing its core. Dr. Reed's eyes widened as the massive warship began to collapse in on itself. The dark energy that had powered it started to dissipate, unraveling like a thread coming undone. The Aronnax warship gave a final, violent shudder. And then, nothing. It was gone, consumed by the very force it had sought to wield. The hidden vessel, having completed its final sequence, began to slow, its glowing form flickering as it returned to normal space. The battle was over. The Earth had been saved, but at an unimaginable cost. Dr. Reed slumped into her seat, breathing heavily, her body trembling from the strain. The vessel had been pushed beyond its limits. And so had she. But they had won. The Aronnax were gone, their fleet shattered, their last weapon destroyed. The control room was silent as the reality of their victory sank in. The screens showed the remnants of the Aronnax warship, floating lifeless in space. Earth's skies were clear once more. But Dr. Reed knew that this victory, though hard-won, was not the end. The Aronnax were not the only threat in the universe. There would be others. Humanity had only just begun to unlock the secrets of the hidden vessel. "Prepare for the future," Dr. Reed said quietly, her voice filled with determination. "We've won this battle, but the war is far from over." And so, with the Aronnax defeated, the vessel powered down, its glowing energy fading as the silence of space returned. But deep within the heart of the vessel, something else stirred. An ancient power, an untold potential, waiting to be unlocked once again. Humanity had won this war, but their true journey was just beginning.